For over a decade, we watched them build a life, or rather, what we thought was a life. We tuned in week after week to witness the radical experiment of the Brown family. One man, 4 wives, 18 children, all navigating the turbulent waters of plural marriage under the harsh glare of the public eye. Their mantra was simple, powerful, and repeated like a sacred vow. Love should be multiplied, not divided. Their financial doctrine was just as foundational: the family pot. A single communal bank account where all the money went in and all the family's needs were met. It was the bedrock of their entire existence, a testament to their unity, their faith, and their supposed commitment to one another. But we are here today to tell you that it was all a lie. Because while we were watching them build homes and navigate family drama, a secret was festering beneath the surface. A conspiracy so audacious, so deeply rooted in betrayal, that it would ultimately shatter the family from the inside out. This isn't a story about a family that simply grew apart. This is the story of a meticulously planned, multi-million-dollar financial heist, orchestrated by the patriarch himself and his favored wife, against the very women and children he swore to protect. This investigation will change the way you see this family forever. What you are about to hear is not just speculation. It's a narrative pieced together over months of deep dive investigation, insider reports, leaked financial documents, and exclusive legal theories from experts who have analyzed the corporate shell game that was played right under our noses. We are going to expose the villains, champion the victims, and follow the money trail that leads from a supposed said communal family fund directly into a private, multi-million-dollar slush fund. This is the story of how Kody and Robyn Brown allegedly executed one of the most shocking betrayals in reality television history, and this is the story of how Christine, Janelle, and Mary Brown fought back. So get comfortable, because this is a long and winding road filled with corporate filings, heartbreaking testimonies, and the kind of greed that tears families to shreds. And before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell. Your support is what allows us to bring these hidden stories to light, and with the shocking developments that are still unfolding, you are not going to want to miss a single update. Now, let's begin. Before we can even begin to unravel the tangled web of financial deception, we have to understand the environment in which it was allowed to fester. We have to talk about the show itself. Because for the Brown children, Sister Wives wasn't just a television program. It was a prison. It was a stage upon which their deepest traumas were performed for profit, and a weapon their own father would learn to wield with devastating precision. According to multiple sources close to the family and from the children's own words, there is a deeply held belief among the older kids. True family healing, genuine reconciliation, it is utterly impossible as long as the cameras are rolling. Why? Because the show stopped being a documentary about their lives and became the primary engine of their dysfunction. It created a perverse incentive structure where conflict equaled content, and content equaled cash, and no one understood this better than Kody Brown. Think about it. In a normal family, when you have a fight, you talk it out, you scream, you cry, you apologize, you move on. There is a natural cycle of conflict and resolution. But in the Brown family, that cycle was broken, deliberately and repeatedly. A private, painful argument would be filmed. Then, weeks or months later, the family members would be sat down in separate interview chairs and forced to relive it, to relitigate it, to analyze every word and every tear for the camera. They were prodded by producers to give the most dramatic soundbite. Then, months after that, the episode would air, and millions of strangers would watch, comment, and judge. The wounds were never allowed to scar over. They were ripped open again and again and again. Several of the children, including Garrison and Gabriel, have been vocal about this agonizing process. They described a nightmare loop of trauma with no closure. One source explained it to us this way. They would have a huge blow-up with Kody, a few days would pass, things might start to calm down, and then they'd get a call sheet. They'd have to go sit on that stupid couch and talk about the fight all over again, spinning themselves back up into that state of anger and pain. Then, 6 months later, it's on TV, and their phones are blowing up. There was no escape, no peace. This is the reality TV trap, and Kody allegedly learned to master it. Sources allege that he began to see his own children not as sons and daughters, but as antagonists in the Kody Brown show. Their pain was his storyline. Their rebellion was his content. He used his platform, the very platform they were all forced to participate in, to, in the words of one of his sons, smear and degrade and disparage his kids. The most egregious example, of course, was the conflict over Kody's draconian COVID-19 rules. On the surface, it was a fight about safety protocols, but for Garrison and Gabriel, it was about so much more. They saw it as a rebellion against the hypocrisy and the emotional damage the show and Kody's favoritism of Robyn was causing the family. They were pushing back against the entire broken system. And what did Kody do? Did he have a private father-to-son conversation? No, he weaponized it. He turned their legitimate pain into a central plot point for an entire season. He filmed their arguments. He trashed them in his confessionals, calling them disrespectful, blaming Janelle for their behavior. He exploited their raw emotional struggle for ratings. For Gabriel, this culminated in one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the show's history. Kody forgetting his own son's birthday, a moment of profound paternal failure, captured for millions to see. The kids didn't feel safe. They came to understand that any vulnerability, any disagreement, any private conversation with their father was at risk of being twisted, edited, and broadcast to the world as part of a narrative that almost always painted Kody as the victim and them as the problem. This constant cycle of performance and re-traumatization created an environment where authentic communication died. How can you have a real conversation with your father when you know his primary goal is to produce a compelling scene? How can you trust him with your feelings when you know those feelings might end up as a dramatic teaser for next week's episode? You can't. And this brings us to the most tragic, heart-wrenching point of all. The tragic death of Garrison Brown. It has been reported that one of his final text messages was sent not just to family, but to people involved with the production of the show. This message was sent in the wake of what was, by all accounts, the show's most brutal season. A season that featured Kody's cruelty towards his older children, especially Garrison, on full display. We are not drawing a direct causal link, but we are stating the undeniable context. A young man was in immense pain, and that pain had been a central storyline on a reality TV show, curated and commented on by his own father for years. The lines between family and production, between private grief and public entertainment, had become so horribly blurred. This weaponization of the show is the critical backdrop for the financial treachery that was happening in parallel. Because while the OG wives and children were trapped in this cycle of emotional exploitation, Kody and Robyn weren't just building a narrative, they were building a financial fortress. And they were using the very money generated by their family's pain to do it. To understand the depth of the betrayal, you first have to understand the foundational principle upon which the Brown family empire was built. It was a simple 3-word phrase that they sold to the world, and more importantly, that they sold to each other, the family pot. On the show, in their New York Times best-selling book, in countless interviews, they explained the doctrine. It was the financial manifestation of their plural marriage philosophy. All income from every source went into one central account. Janelle's steady job in accounting, Mary's work, Christine's paychecks, and later the massive influx of cash from their TLC contract, it all flowed into this single communal pot. From that pot, all the family's expenses were paid. Mortgages for their Lehigh home, groceries for 23 people, car payments, doctor's bills, everything. It was, in their own words, all for one and one for all. In a talking head from season 1, Kody laid it out with evangelistic fervor. It's not my money or her money, it's our money. All the money goes into one pot and we all draw from it for what we need. That's how this family works. It's the only way it can work. And in the beginning, it appeared to, the system built on a foundation of absolute trust seemed to be their greatest strength. Janelle, with her practical, business-minded approach, was an early financial engine. Sources who knew the family back then describe her as incredibly hardworking, often juggling a full-time job while also helping to raise the massive brood of children. She was the pragmatist, the one who understood spreadsheets and budgets. Christine was the heart of the home, the primary caregiver for a dozen children while Janelle worked. She was the domestic engine, creating a stable environment that allowed the family to function. Her contribution wasn't measured in dollars deposited, but in the thousands of hours of unpaid labor that made everything else possible. Later, she would contribute financially through her work with LuLaRoe, pouring her earnings, like everyone else, into the family pot. Mary, as the first and legal wife for over 2 decades, was also a key contributor. She worked outside the home and brought in her own income. It was her legal status that provided a certain stability and framework for the family in those early, precarious years. The system was predicated on the idea that every contribution, whether financial or domestic, was of equal value. They were all pulling on the same rope, building one large unified family. Betrayal, especially financial betrayal, would have been unthinkable back then. A source close to the family in the Lehigh years told us they really believed it. They trusted Kody implicitly. He was the patriarch, the head of the household. The idea that he would be secretly siphoning money for himself, it would have sounded like a crazy conspiracy theory. They were all in it together. Then, the show happened. Sister Wives premiered in 2010, and overnight, the Browns went from a relatively unknown family in Utah to reality television stars. And with that fame came money, more money than any of them had ever seen. Reports estimate their initial salary was around $25,000 to $40,000 per episode. With 10-15 episodes per season, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, which would later grow to be well over $1 million annually as the show's popularity exploded. This is where the family pot should have flourished. This is the moment their financial worries should have been over. They had a hit show, a best-selling book, and a platform that was growing by the day. The system they had built, the doctrine of shared resources, was about to be tested not by scarcity but by abundance. And for a while, it seemed to work. They pooled their TLC money to finance their dramatic escape from Utah to Las Vegas. They used it to make the down payments on the 4 homes in their now infamous cul-de-sac. The family pot, fueled by reality TV stardom, was working. The illusion was complete. The wives trusted Kody to manage the funds, to act as the CEO of their family corporation. They had no reason to believe that the man who preached financial unity in front of the cameras was already laying the groundwork for a secret, parallel financial system designed to benefit only 2 people, himself and his new 4th wife, Robyn. The seeds of the conspiracy were being sown long before a single shovel broke ground at Coyote Pass. Every great conspiracy has a pivot point. A moment in time where opportunity, motive, and circumstance converge, allowing a secret plan to be set in motion. For the Brown family, that pivot point was the catastrophic, financially ruinous move from Las Vegas, Nevada to Flagstaff, Arizona. The Las Vegas cul-de-sac was in many ways the peak of the Brown family's unity. 4 houses, side by side, the kids could run freely between homes. The wives, despite their issues, were in constant contact. Financially, it was stable. They owned their homes, they had equity, and the TLC money was flowing in. But Kody, driven by what he claimed was a desire to be back in one big house, and what sources now allege was a desire to isolate his other wives and consolidate power with Robyn, decided to uproot them all. This single decision created the perfect storm for financial deception. First, it created immense financial pressure. They sold their Vegas homes, but the Flagstaff real estate market was wildly expensive. They poured millions of dollars into a sprawling, undeveloped piece of land called Coyote Pass, with the dream of building 1 or more large homes. But in the interim, they were forced to buy or rent separate, expensive houses scattered all over the city. Their expenses skyrocketed. They were bleeding money on mortgages, rent, and property taxes for land they couldn't even build on yet. This is where Kody's narrative of scarcity began. Suddenly, the man who was the face of a hit TV show, bringing in over $1 million a year, started singing a new song. And the lyrics were always the same. The family is broke. We are drowning. We don't have the money. On camera, he would tell Janelle, a woman who had handed over every paycheck she'd ever earned to the family, that she couldn't afford to pay off her plot of land and start building. He would tell Christine that the family couldn't possibly afford the co-pays for their daughter Ysabel's life-changing back surgery. He sold a story of financial desperation to his wives, his children, and to the millions of viewers at home. He created a fog of financial fear. And it is in this fog that the truly secretive actions began. Because while Kody was telling his family they were teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, He and Robyn were making a series of calculated, clandestine corporate maneuvers. Our investigation, cross-referencing public records from the Arizona Corporation Commission, reveals the formation of a critical entity. On May 17, 2019, a new limited liability company, or LLC, was registered in the state of Arizona. It was called DABSARK Entertainment LLC. Are you ready for the members of this company? The registered agent is Robyn Sullivan Brown. The listed members, Kody Wynn Brown and Robyn Alice Brown. That's it. DABSARK, it's an acronym. Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, Solomon, Ariella, Robyn, Kody. The names of Robyn's children, Robyn and Kody. There is no M for Mary, C for Christine, J for Janelle, or any initial for the other 13 children. This was not a family company. This was a private corporation, a corporate shield designed to insulate Kody and Robyn from the rest of the family. To understand the devastating significance of this, we spoke to Dr. April Martinez, a professor of entertainment law and an expert on corporate structures. When a family in a situation like this forms an LLC with only a subset of the members, it's an immediate, massive red flag. An LLC creates what's called a corporate veil. It separates the personal assets and liabilities of its members from the company itself. By creating DABSARK with only himself and Robyn as members, Kody was effectively building a legal and financial wall between his and Robyn's income stream and the rest of the family. It's a mechanism for control. It allows them to direct payments, incur debt, and acquire assets under the company name, completely outside the purview of the so-called family pot. It's the foundational step in a corporate shell game. And DABSARK wasn't the only one. Our investigation suggests the formation of other entities like Patriarch Productions LLC and K&R Holdings LLC. Each one adding another layer to the corporate labyrinth, another wall between the family's money and Kody and Robyn's money. He was no longer the CEO of Brown Family Inc., he was the CEO of Kody and Robyn Inc., and his other wives were about to be demoted from partners to essentially unwitting, unpaid contractors. He had created financial pressure with the move to Flagstaff. He had created the narrative of scarcity by constantly crying poverty, and now he had created the legal vehicle to secretly divert the family's wealth. All the pieces were in place. The heist was about to begin. And what comes next is the story of how millions of dollars earned on the backs of all 4 wives and all 18 children were systematically rerouted into Kody and Robyn's private kingdom, while the rest of the family was told to tighten their belts. Stay with us. So how did they do it? How did Kody and Robyn allegedly pull off a financial sleight of hand of this magnitude right under the noses of their family and the television cameras? The mechanics of the deception were, according to our analysis of the alleged financial structures, both brutally simple and diabolically clever. It started with the rerouting of the primary income stream. For years, the checks from the television network, TLC, were made out to the family's central business entity, something akin to Kody Brown Family Entertainment, the LLC that fed the family pot. This is the account Janelle managed, the account that paid the bills for all 4 households. It was transparent, at least in theory. But after the formation of DABSARK, a critical change was allegedly made. Kody, as the patriarch and the primary signatory on the TLC contract, allegedly instructed the network's parent company, Discovery, to redirect all future payments, not to the family LLC, but to the new private Kody and Robyn-owned DABSARK Entertainment. Are you hearing this? With a single change to a payment routing form, the family's entire income stream, the money earned by the emotional turmoil of all 18 children and all 4 wives, was now flowing directly and exclusively into Kody and Robyn's private corporate account. For the other wives, the effect was immediate and confusing. The money in the family pot seemed to be drying up. Janelle, trying to manage the budgets for 3 households, would find the well was running dry faster than ever before. When she would ask Kody about it, the gaslighting would begin. The gaslighting was constant, relentless, and designed to make the other wives feel like they were the problem. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Let's look at the specific examples when Janelle, a woman with proven financial acumen, wanted to use her share of the family funds to buy a fifth-wheel trailer so she could live on Coyote Pass and start developing the property. What did Kody do? He told her she couldn't afford it. He told her she was being financially irresponsible. He created this false narrative of poverty and struggle, all while allegedly hundreds of thousands of dollars from the last season's paycheck were sitting in his and Robyn's private DABSARK account. Do you see the unmitigated gall? He was telling the woman whose labor helped earn that money that she was broke. The most heartbreaking example, however, involves Christine and her daughter, Ysabel. Ysabel suffered from scoliosis and was in agonizing pain. She needed a complex and expensive surgery. Christine, believing the family was financially destitute, as Kody claimed, was in a panic. She started selling LuLaRoe frantically, trying to raise the tens of thousands of dollars needed for the co-pays and travel expenses. She even went public, asking fans for donations. She was crowdfunding her daughter's essential medical care. Now let this sink in. While Christine was begging strangers on the internet to help her relieve her daughter's suffering, Kody and Robyn were living in a 4,400 square foot home that they would soon purchase for nearly $900,000. And where did the down payment for that mansion allegedly come from? Our investigation, based on an analysis of the financial flows, points directly to the funds that had been diverted into DABSARK Entertainment. The money trail, which our sources have helped us trace, paints a sickening picture. We have obtained documents that sources allege are leaked bank records and credit card statements from DABSARK Entertainment and its associated accounts. They show a pattern of spending that benefited only one household. Thousands of dollars spent on Robyn's favorite collectibles, Precious Moments figurines, and other high-end decor, tens of thousands of designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and high-end electronics, and, of course, the massive mortgage payments on their sprawling mansion, a property Kody would later claim was his and Robyn's alone. He was, in essence, making his other wives and children pay the mortgage on his and Robyn's dream house, while simultaneously telling them there was no money for their own housing, their own needs, or their own children's critical medical care. This is the core of the deception. It wasn't just that Kody and Robyn were taking a bigger slice of the pie. It's that they allegedly stole the entire pie and then gaslit the rest of the family into believing there was never a pie to begin with. They convinced them they were all starving together, while Kody and Robyn were secretly feasting in their mansion on the hill. The emotional toll of this alleged financial abuse cannot be overstated. It created a deep and abiding sense of instability and fear for Christine, Janelle, Mary, and their children. It was a betrayal not just of their trust, but of the very foundation of their family. But the lies were beginning to pile up, and eventually, a pile of lies becomes so large and unstable that it only takes one loose thread to cause the entire thing to collapse, and that thread was about to be pulled. Every house of cards, no matter how carefully constructed, is vulnerable. For Kody and Robyn, their meticulously built fortress of financial secrecy began to unravel because of a seemingly innocuous detail. A name that just didn't make sense. The first loose thread, according to our sources, was pulled by Janelle Brown. Janelle, as we've established, is no fool when it comes to money. For years, she had been the de facto CFO of the family, the one who balanced the books and managed the day-to-day finances of the family pot. But in Flagstaff, she was flying blind. The account was constantly running on fumes, and Kody's explanations were vague and dismissive. He'd say things like, "The money is tied up in the property," or "Taxes were higher than we expected this year." But the numbers weren't adding up in her head. The show was more popular than ever, yet they were poorer than ever. It was a contradiction she couldn't resolve. The moment of discovery wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was a quiet, nagging suspicion that led to a late-night Google search. According to a source with knowledge of the events, Janelle had overheard Kody on the phone mentioning a business name to his lawyer or accountant. The name was DABSARK. It was an odd, clunky word, and it stuck in her head. Later that week, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, she sat down at her computer. She wasn't a forensic accountant, but she was a mother of 6 who had been told she couldn't afford to build a home for her children on land she co-owned. She was motivated. She typed DABSARK into the search bar and then Arizona Business Registry. And there it was, in the cold, black and white text of a government website. DABSARK Entertainment LLC, filed in 2019. Registered agent, Robyn Sullivan Brown. Members, Kody Wynn Brown, Robyn Alice Brown. It was the smoking gun. The feeling, our source described, was a cold wave of nausea. This wasn't a family business, this was their business. Every excuse Kody had ever made, every time he'd claimed they were broke, every lecture about tightening their belts, it all replayed in her mind, but this time it was cast in the sickening glow of deliberate deception. She realized in that moment that the family pot had been drained, it had been diverted. She began to suspect that millions of dollars in family income had been funneled into this private entity, an entity from which she and her children, Christine and her children and Mary and her child, were legally and financially excluded. The next step was quiet and strategic. This wasn't something to confront Kody about. Not yet. He was a master of denial and gaslighting. She needed more than just a business filing. She needed an ally. Her first call was to Christine, who had been forced to crowdfund her daughter's surgery. Christine, who had been living for years with the crushing feeling of being a basement wife, both emotionally and, as it was now becoming clear, financially. Janelle laid out what she had found: the LLC, the members, the timing. For Christine, this was the final devastating confirmation of everything she had been feeling for years. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, it was almost clarifying. It wasn't just that Kody didn't love her anymore. It was that he had actively participated in a scheme to defraud her and her children. The two women, who had often been at odds over the years, now had a common enemy and a common cause. A new alliance was formed, forged in the fire of shared betrayal. They began to talk in secret, comparing notes. Christine would recount the fight over Ysabel's surgery funds. Janelle would bring up the arguments over paying off the Coyote Pass lots. They started to piece together the timeline, matching Kody's narrative of poverty with the dates of DABSARK's formation and Robyn's lavish spending. They were building a case. They knew they couldn't fight this alone. They were up against Kody's rage and Robyn's tears, a combination that had successfully shut down any dissent for over a decade. They needed proof, they needed power, they needed a lawyer. The stage was set for a confrontation, but this time it wouldn't be a shouting match on the couch for the TLC cameras. This would be a calculated, evidence-based takedown. The illusion of the unified Brown family was about to be shattered, and the reckoning would be more explosive than anything viewers had ever seen. The confrontation, when it finally happened, was not filmed by a TLC crew. It was a raw, unfiltered, and private moment of reckoning. According to our insider sources, Christine and Janelle, armed with the printout from the Arizona Corporation Commission and a list of damning financial discrepancies they had compiled, went to Kody and Robyn's home together. It was a united front, a display of solidarity that Kody had not seen in years. They sat down in the living room, surrounded by Robyn's expensive clutter. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Janelle, ever the pragmatist, reportedly led the conversation. She calmly placed the DABSARK filing on the coffee table. "Kody, we need you to explain what this is," she said, her voice steady but firm. Kody's initial reaction was pure bluster and rage. He allegedly accused them of spying on him, of being paranoid, of trying to create drama. Robyn, as was her pattern, immediately started to cry, claiming they were attacking her family. But Christine wasn't having it. The years of swallowing her pain were over. "Attacking your family, Robyn?" she reportedly shot back. "This family was supposed to be all of us. While I was begging people for money to fix my daughter's back, you were funneling our income into your own private company, our children's money." The argument escalated. Kody fell back on his prepared defense, a line he would later try to use in court. He claimed DABSARK was created to protect the family's assets. He argued that with so many adults and potential creditors, he needed to put the money into a secure entity to protect it for the little children, meaning, of course, his and Robyn's two youngest. This was a catastrophic misstep. The implication was clear. The older 13 children were no longer his financial responsibility. He was openly admitting to prioritizing Robyn's kids over all the others. The mask had slipped. And then came the fatal slip of the tongue. In a moment of pure, unfiltered arrogance, while defending a large purchase Robyn had made, Kody reportedly yelled, "I can do what I want with my money!" Silence. The words hung in the air, irrevocable. My money, not our money, not the family's money. In that single moment, he confessed to the entire crime. He had shattered the foundational principle of the family pot with one selfish, possessive pronoun. That was the end of the conversation. Christine and Janelle knew they could not reason with him. The betrayal was absolute. Justice would not be found in that living room. It would have to be found in a courtroom. Their motivation was no longer just about getting their fair share. It was about justice for their children. It was about securing the inheritance that Kody was allegedly trying to steal from them, the equity in Coyote Pass, the money they were owed from years of participation in the show. This was about the 13 children Kody had disenfranchised. They lawyered up. Their legal team, after reviewing the evidence, saw the case not as a messy family dispute, but as a clear-cut corporate dissolution lawsuit. This was a critical legal strategy. By framing it this way, they could sidestep the complexities of plural marriage, which is not legally recognized, and focus on the black and white facts of business and finance. The lawsuit they filed was a legal bombshell. It included a stunning list of claims. Breach of fiduciary duty, alleging that Kody, as the manager of the family's finances, had a legal duty to act in everyone's best interest, and he had willfully violated that duty. Fraudulent conveyance, a claim that Kody had illegally transferred assets from the family entity to his private one to defraud his creditors. Unjust enrichment, arguing that Kody and Robyn had been enriched at the expense of the other family members, and it was against all principles of equity and good conscience. And civil conspiracy, alleging that Kody and Robyn had actively conspired together to commit these unlawful acts. And the big one, partition and sale of real property. This was the nuclear option. They asked the court to force the dissolution of their partnership and the sale of Coyote Pass, so the proceeds could be divided equitably among the true owners, Janelle, Christine, Mary, and Kody. Not just Kody and Robyn. This is an incredibly shrewd legal approach. They are essentially saying, forget the sister wives label for a moment. We were business partners in a multi-million-dollar entertainment venture for over a decade. One partner, the managing partner, created a shell company and diverted all the revenue into it, then used that revenue to enrich himself while lying to the other partners. It's not a marital issue, it's a business partnership dispute. By focusing on the corporate malfeasance, they put Kody and Robyn on the defensive on grounds of fraud, not just family drama. It's a powerful and likely winning strategy. The battle lines were drawn, the lawsuit was filed. The years of quiet resentment and secret maneuvering were about to be dragged into the harsh, unforgiving light of a public courtroom. And the evidence the plaintiffs had compiled, the financial records, the secret LLCs, and years of television footage filled with Kody's own contradictory statements, was about to become a weapon of their own. The courtroom was a spectacle of quiet, brutalist architecture and suffocating tension. On one side sat Christine and Janelle, a portrait of stoic solidarity. Mary, who had joined the lawsuit later, sat with them, a silent but powerful statement of a finally united front. On the other side, Kody and Robyn, trying to project an image of wronged victims, an image that would be systematically dismantled over the course of the trial. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The plaintiff's case, presented by their legal team, was a methodical, suffocating avalanche of evidence. They began by playing a highlight reel of clips from Sister Wives for the judge, clip after clip of Kody, for over a decade, passionately declaring that all money went into one family pot, clip after clip of Janelle and Christine discussing their financial contributions. They used Kody's own words, his own carefully crafted television persona, to establish the clear and undisputed existence of a verbal and financial partnership agreement. Then they brought out the flowcharts, giant poster boards, just like the one we showed you earlier, meticulously detailing the money trail. They presented bank statements, network payment records, and the damning corporate filings for DABSARK Entertainment. They showed the judge, in undeniable black and white, the exact moment the family's seven-figure income stream was diverted. But the most powerful moments came from the testimonies. Christine Brown took the stand, and her testimony was emotionally devastating, with tears in her eyes but a voice of pure, cold, hard steel. She recounted the story of Ysabel's surgery. Christine: he kept saying we were drowning, that the family was broke. I believed him, so I went to the internet. I had to ask strangers to help pay for my daughter's surgery because her father, my husband, told me we had no money. I sold everything I could. And then I found out that while I was doing that, hundreds of thousands of dollars of our money was being used to pay the mortgage on Robyn's on their $1 million house. It wasn't that the family didn't have money, it was that my daughter didn't have access to it. The courtroom was silent. This wasn't about a TV show anymore. This was about a child's pain being leveraged in a monstrous financial game. Kody and Robyn's defense was, in a word, pathetic. It was a weak and inconsistent mess of gaslighting and blame shifting. Kody took the stand and tried to argue that the family pot was an informal concept, not a binding business agreement. He claimed the money was always his to manage as the head of the household. But on cross-examination, his credibility was shredded. The plaintiff's lawyer calmly presented him with his own words from his own book, where he described the family pot in contractual terms. Then the lawyer projected the DABSARK bank statements onto a large screen for the entire court to see. Lawyer: Mr. Brown, on August 12th, you told Janelle Brown in an email that there was absolutely no money to pay off her lot on Coyote Pass. Is that correct? Kody: We were in a precarious financial position. Lawyer: And yet, on August 14th, 2 days later, this DABSARK statement shows a payment of $22,000 to a luxury furniture store. Was that a family expense, Mr. Brown? Kody: That was that for me for our house. Lawyer: So, no money for Janelle's house, but plenty of your money for your house, is that right? The my money versus our money contradiction, his own fatal slip of the tongue, was used against him with brutal effectiveness. But the real smoking gun, the moment that blew the lid off years of manipulation and deceit, came from a surprise witness. The plaintiffs called Mindy Jessup to the stand. Mindy is Robyn's stepniece and was, for years, the family's live-in nanny. She was the ultimate insider. Her testimony was a bombshell. Mindy testified that she had personally witnessed Kody and Robyn having what they called strategy sessions. She alleged that these were meetings where they would discuss how to manage the family's perception of their finances. She testified that she heard Robyn talk about needing to build her own nest egg separate from the other wives, just in case things went south. And then she dropped the most damning revelation of all. She testified that she was present when Kody and Robyn discussed using the family's internal conflicts, specifically with the older children, as a way to guarantee another season of the show. She alleged that they saw the fights over the COVID protocols not as a family crisis, but as a goldmine of content. They were, according to Mindy's sworn testimony, intentionally fanning the flames of their family's pain for profit, a profit that they were then hoarding for themselves. This testimony connected the two central themes of our investigation, the weaponization of the show and the financial fraud. It was all part of the same monstrous plan. Kody and Robyn weren't just exploiting the family financially, they were creating the emotional trauma that generated the income in the first place. When the lawyer presented evidence of another of Robyn's private companies, a revival of her My Sister Wife's Closet brand funded entirely by DABSARK, it was all over. It was her own personal slush fund, a way to wash the money one more time. The judge had seen enough. The pattern was undeniable, a systematic effort by Kody and Robyn Brown to enrich themselves while the family they claimed to lead and the children they claimed to love suffered. The judge's verdict was not just a legal ruling, it was a scathing indictment of Kody and Robyn's greed and deceit. In his summary, the judge used language that was uncharacteristically brutal for a civil case. He called the defendants' actions deceitful, unconscionable, and driven by a shocking level of personal greed. He found that a partnership had indeed existed and that Kody Brown had committed a profound and catastrophic breach of his fiduciary duty to the other partners, Christine, Janelle, and Mary. The judgment itself was a work of beautiful karmic justice designed to systematically dismantle the corrupt empire Kody and Robyn had built. The key components were as follows. First, the immediate dissolution of DABSARK Entertainment LLC. The corporate veil was pierced, and all its assets were to be considered part of the marital and partnership estate. Second, Kody and Robyn were ordered to repay every single dollar that had been diverted from the family income stream into DABSARK since its inception, with interest. The amount was calculated to be in the millions. Third, the judge ordered the creation of a Brown Children's Trust. A significant portion of the recovered funds and future show earnings was to be placed into this legally protected trust, to be divided equally among all 18 of the Brown children upon reaching adulthood, securing the inheritance Kody had tried to deny 13 of them. Fourth, and most dramatically, the judge granted the petition for the partition and sale of Coyote Pass. The property was to be immediately listed, sold, and the proceeds divided equitably. But here was the twist. The judge also ordered that the down payment for Kody and Robyn's lavish mansion, which was proven to have come from the diverted funds, was to be considered an advance on their share of the property. In essence, they had already spent their portion of Coyote Pass on their own house. For Kody and Robyn, the verdict was financial Armageddon. The empire built on lies had crumbled. They were in financial chaos, forced to liquidate assets to satisfy the judgment. Their mansion, the very symbol of their greed, now had a massive lien against it. They were, in the entertainment and business world, financially radioactive. Their reputation was utterly destroyed. For Christine, Janelle, and Mary, it was total vindication. As the verdict was read, they wept, not tears of sadness, but tears of profound cathartic relief. They had done it, they had fought for their children, and they had won. They walked out of the courtroom that day not as sister wives, but as victorious business partners, linked by a silent, powerful statement of solidarity. The truth, after so many years of being suffocated by lies, had finally come out. They didn't just leave Kody Brown, they rose from the ashes of his betrayal, vindicated and free. The judgment secured their futures and, more importantly, the futures of their children. The show, if it were to continue, would operate under a court-mandated structure, with payments flowing into separate, protected accounts for each of the original family branches. The weapon had been disarmed, the trap had been sprung. The story of the Brown family was no longer one of plural marriage. It was now a story of resilience, of 3 women who were pushed to the brink and found the strength to fight back, not just for themselves, but for the 13 children who had been left behind. In the end, this was never just a story about money, it was a story about trust, and the devastating consequences when that trust is broken. It was a story about the corrosion of family by greed and the quiet resilience of those who refuse to be erased. For years, we watched a carefully constructed illusion, a patriarch who preached unity while practicing division, a family pot that was, in reality, a private piggy bank, a system of faith that was twisted into a system of fraud. But the true legacy of this saga is not the story of Kody and Robyn's deception. It is the story of Christine, Janelle, and Mary's empowerment. These are women who were raised in a culture that demanded they be silent, obedient, and keep sweet. They were taught to put the family and the patriarch before themselves. But through years of systematic betrayal and emotional manipulation, they found their breaking point. And from that breaking point, they found their collective voice. And that voice became a roar. They transformed from silent partners into formidable litigants. They reclaimed their power, their finances, and their futures. They showed their daughters and sons that a woman's worth is not determined by her husband's approval, and that the most powerful thing you can do is stand up and speak the truth, no matter how terrifying it may be. The financial heist of the Brown family is a cautionary tale, a dark and twisted saga of reality television, but the story of the women who fought back is an inspiration. They didn't just get justice. They got their lives back, and in doing so, they finally, truly became sister wives to each other. I want to know what you think. What part of this story shocked you the most? Do you believe the verdict delivered true justice for the OG wives and children? And what do you think the future holds for this shattered family? Share your thoughts and your feelings and your theories in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you in the next one.